The first time my husband called me crazy, we'd only been married 11 months. I remember the exact moment because I was standing barefoot in our kitchen holding a shattered coffee mug while rain slammed against the windows outside. Daniel came home 3 hours late smelling like whiskey and someone else's perfume. Not enough perfume to prove anything legally. Just enough to make my stomach tighten. "Who were you with?" I asked carefully because even then I already understood certain tones triggered him. Daniel loosened his tie dramatically and laughed like I'd said something adorable. "Jesus, Maya." Then came the sentence that slowly rewired my entire nervous system over the next decade. "You're acting crazy again. Crazy again. Not upset. Not hurt. Not suspicious. Crazy." My name is Maya Bennett, and for 10 years I lived inside a marriage where every emotional reaction I had became evidence against me somehow. If I cried, I was unstable. If I got angry, I was irrational. If I calmly questioned contradictions, I was manipulative. Daniel didn't scream much. Honestly, I almost wish he had. Men like my husband destroy reality quietly. Calm voice. Patient smile. Tiny corrections repeated consistently until you start doubting your own memory. Gaslighting sounds dramatic when people describe it online. In real life, it feels small at first. Like slowly losing balance in a room nobody else notices tilting. Daniel Bennett was a corporate attorney with expensive suits, perfect posture, and the kind of charm that made waiters apologize when he complained about food. He understood image instinctively. Around friends, he touched my lower back affectionately and called me beautiful. Around family, he played devoted husband perfectly. Nobody saw the private version of him that treated my emotions like inconveniences requiring correction. "You misheard me. That never happened. You're remembering it wrong. Why are you always so dramatic?" Over time, I started documenting arguments secretly in journals because conversations left me disoriented afterward. Daniel found one once during our 4th year of marriage. He read several pages silently then looked at me with genuine pity. "Do you realize how unhealthy this is?" Somehow I apologized to him afterward. That's how deep psychological manipulation works. You become responsible for your own confusion. We had our son Oliver during year 6. For a while, things improved genuinely. Daniel adored Oliver in the way men sometimes adore babies because babies provide unconditional admiration without complex emotional needs yet. But parenthood intensified Daniel's control issues too. Suddenly my parenting decisions became additional evidence of instability whenever we disagreed. "You're overreacting. He's fine. Stop being hysterical." Hysterical. Such an old-fashioned word for modern emotional dismissal. The beginning of the end came after Oliver's 7th birthday party. I found messages accidentally while using Daniel's iPad to order pizza. Nothing explicit initially. Just intimacy. Inside jokes. Late-night conversations with a woman named Serena from his office. My chest tightened immediately reading them. "Wish you were here instead. Can't stop thinking about last night." Familiar terror flooded my body because I already knew what came next. Confrontation. Denial. Somehow my fault eventually. Daniel walked into the living room still wearing his gym clothes when I looked up from the screen. Silence stretched between us. He saw the iPad immediately. "Who's Serena?" I asked quietly. He barely blinked. "Coworker. You slept with her." Not question. Statement. Daniel sighed dramatically, already annoyed. "Maya." There it was. The tone. The exhausted patient managing an emotional wife tone. "Don't do this. I'm literally reading your messages." He walked over calmly, taking the iPad from my hands. "You invaded my privacy." I actually laughed from disbelief. "Are you serious? You always jump to extremes. You told her you couldn't stop thinking about last night." Daniel rubbed his forehead like I was giving him a migraine. "We had drinks after work." "Did you sleep with her?" Long silence. Then softly, "This is exactly why I can't talk to you." Deflection. Reversal. Suddenly his betrayal transformed into my emotional failure. But something inside me finally snapped that night. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe motherhood. Maybe I simply couldn't survive another decade doubting obvious reality. I want a divorce, I whispered. Daniel stared at me for a long moment. Then smiled slightly. Actually smiled. No, you don't. That terrified me more than yelling would have. Yes, I said shakily. I do. His smile disappeared instantly. You'd destroy Oliver's life because you're paranoid? There it was immediately. Weaponized parenthood. You cheated on me. Prove it. God. That sentence still makes my stomach twist remembering it. Prove it. As though emotional devastation required courtroom standards before counting. The divorce became war within weeks. Daniel hired the most aggressive custody attorney in the county and launched a narrative so carefully constructed I almost admired it professionally. Maya Bennett, emotionally unstable wife experiencing paranoia and anger issues after becoming increasingly erratic for years. He never accused me of anything dramatic enough sounding unbelievable. That's what made it effective. Concerned husband worried about his son's environment. Subtle. Reasonable. Terrifying. Friends started acting strangely around me. Daniel's parents suddenly requested supervised visits with Oliver present. Even my own mother asked carefully whether I'd considered therapy for stress. Stress. Funny how women's justified anger gets medically softened into stress once men start controlling the narrative. Then came the custody evaluation. Psychological interviews. Home visits. Questions about emotional regulation. Daniel remained perfectly composed through all of it. Meanwhile, I looked exhausted because I was exhausted. Fighting someone determined to redefine your reality publicly burns through sanity fast. You seem anxious, the evaluator noted gently during my second interview. I almost laughed. My husband is trying to take my child by convincing everyone I'm mentally unstable. She scribbled notes calmly. Why do you think he believes that? That question haunted me afterward because suddenly even defending myself sounded defensive somehow. Daniel's lawyer, Cynthia Walsh, specialized in high-conflict custody cases. Translation: professionally polished character assassination. During depositions she smiled sympathetically while asking whether I'd historically struggled with emotional overreactions. Mrs. Bennett, would you describe yourself as sensitive? Sensitive. Another dangerous word used against women professionally. Daniel testified calmly that I experienced distorted perceptions during emotional episodes. Distorted perceptions. Like catching him cheating apparently. I started losing weight unintentionally from stress. Sleeping maybe 3 hours nightly. Some mornings I stared at my reflection barely recognizing myself anymore. Which, honestly, probably helped Daniel's case visually. Then 3 weeks before final hearings, I found the voicemail accidentally. I was transferring old phone files onto a hard drive because Daniel's attorney requested additional communication records. Thousands of forgotten audio clips. Birthday videos. Grocery reminders. Then one file dated almost 2 years earlier caught my attention. 2:14 a.m. unknown context. I pressed play absent-mindedly while organizing folders. Daniel's voice filled the room immediately. Slurred. Furious. You think anyone would believe you over me? My entire body froze. I sat down slowly, listening harder. You're too emotional, Maya. That's your problem. Loud crashing sound somewhere in the background. Then Daniel again. Colder now. If you ever try taking Oliver from me, I'll make sure everyone knows how unstable you are. My heartbeat started hammering violently. I didn't even remember this voicemail existing. Then suddenly memory returned. 2 years earlier. Daniel drunk after a corporate dinner. Locked out because he lost his keys. He'd called repeatedly while I slept upstairs with Oliver during a fever. I must have saved the voicemail accidentally afterward and forgotten it completely. But the important part came 30 seconds later. Daniel laughed softly into the phone. Nobody's gonna care I slept with Serena anyway. They'll just think you drove me to it. Silence. Then, you always make me do terrible things. I literally stopped breathing. Confession. Threats. Manipulation. All recorded in his own voice years before divorce even started. My hands shook so badly I dropped the phone. For almost an hour, I just sat on my office floor crying from pure relief. Not because the voicemail magically erased trauma. Because for the first time in years, reality existed outside my own memory. Proof. Objective, undeniable proof that I wasn't insane. My attorney, Rebecca Lynn, listened twice without speaking. Then she leaned back slowly. "Well," she said carefully. "That changes things." Final custody hearings happened on a gray Thursday morning in October. Daniel arrived perfectly tailored as always. Calm. Controlled. Confident. He smiled politely at me across the courtroom like we were discussing property taxes instead of our child. Rebecca waited until cross-examination before introducing the voicemail. Daniel's attorney objected immediately. The judge allowed it anyway after reviewing authentication records. "Mr. Bennett," Rebecca said calmly, "do you recognize this recording?" Daniel listened expressionlessly while his own voice filled the courtroom, describing me as unstable before admitting the affair and threatening reputational destruction. Halfway through playback, Cynthia Walsh actually closed her eyes briefly. Tiny reaction. But I saw it. Because good attorneys recognize disaster immediately. Daniel remained outwardly composed until the final sentence. "You always make me do terrible things." Then something shifted in his face. Not guilt. Anger. Pure exposed anger. Rebecca spoke quietly afterward. "Mr. Bennett, could you explain what you meant by making sure everyone believed your wife was unstable?" Silence stretched. Daniel adjusted his cufflinks carefully. "I was intoxicated." "Were you lying?" "I was upset." "Were you lying?" Another silence. The judge watched him steadily now. Different energy in the room entirely. Daniel's carefully curated reasonable man image cracked just enough, revealing something colder underneath. "No," he admitted finally. Rebecca nodded once. "No further questions." I cried in the courthouse bathroom afterward so hard another woman asked if I needed help. Because hearing years of manipulation spoken aloud publicly felt surreal. Like escaping a room I'd been trapped inside so long I forgot other air existed. The judge awarded joint custody eventually but denied Daniel's request for primary placement completely. Her written remarks included one sentence I still think about constantly. The court finds evidence of coercive emotional manipulation concerning. Coercive emotional manipulation. Such clinical words for something that nearly erased my trust in my own mind permanently. Daniel barely spoke to me for months afterward except through parenting apps. When he finally did during Oliver's soccer game one rainy Saturday, his voice sounded almost curious. "You kept that voicemail for 2 years?" I looked at him steadily. "I forgot it existed." He laughed once softly, shaking his head. "Lucky you." No apology. Of course not. Men like Daniel experience exposure as injustice rather than accountability. Oliver is 10 now. Smart. Sensitive. Already startlingly perceptive about emotional dynamics. I'm careful never speaking badly about his father around him because children deserve freedom to form relationships independently when safe. But I teach him something constantly now. Quietly. Repeatedly. Feelings are information. Confusion matters. And anyone who loves you should help reality make more sense, not less. Sometimes I still listen to that voicemail late at night. Not from obsession. From validation. Because psychological manipulation leaves strange scars. Even now, years later, certain arguments make me question my memory automatically. Certain tones trigger panic. Healing from gaslighting means rebuilding trust with your own perception piece by piece. The strangest part is this. Daniel truly believed I was the emotional one throughout our marriage. And maybe I was emotional. Hurt people generally are. But there's something terrifying about calm cruelty. Society trusts composed men instinctively while treating distressed women like unreliable narrators of their own suffering. My husband called me crazy for years until a courtroom heard his own voice confirming exactly what I'd lived through all along. And the most painful lesson wasn't that he lied. It was realizing how easily people believed him because he smiled while doing it.